For this mass exploration of opportunity on the continent of Africa. The first gentleman I caught up, like I said, he is the founding president of the African Business Angels Network, the godfather of angel investing in Africa, and one of my favorite people on earth, Tommy Davies. Come up, Tommy. The next gentleman I got to listen to talk last night, and has done amazing things. And in fact, I've got to see some of the value and work that he's done when I was in Gurugram City with the first building of the GE call center, which is a big development there. But Raman, come up, and again, amazing things that I've done in their time. They're going to have a conversation with us. And immediately after that, we'll break for tea. And again, we'll keep time. Then we'll come back to listen to some more kind of group collective conversations. Over to you, Tommy.
Can you hear me? Yes. Right. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much. I've already requested him to be kind to me.
I've got a whole bunch of questions, as you can imagine. Well prepared. Really, first of all, you are credited as the father of the Indian BPO industry. Looking back, which moment gave you the clearest proof that India could lead in global services?
Listen, Tony, I don't think I started this to prove that India could lead anything. This entire revolution started when I was an employee of American Express, and I saw that in my team I had people who were intelligent, educated, like most of us here, not educated, raise your hands, and willing to learn. That third thing was the single most critical aspect, and what I saw as I led functions for American Express, and before that I was a consultant, and I met a lot of people. I saw that it was like molten wax. The Indian workforce was like molten wax. You could mold anything out of it. You could train them, you could teach them. And during my career at American Express, I got a lot of benefit of that. You know, I got the bonuses and everything. The kids did all the hard work, but they were fantastic because they could be trained. That transformed into an opportunity to take what we were doing locally to international part of American Express. And actually my bosses couldn't believe what we could do. The sheer quality of the work that we were able to churn out. Yes, it required training. It required an awful lot of training. I used to claim I run a mini university, because at one point of time I had in the building that you spoke about, the GE Capital Genpact building, I used to have over 100 training rooms that ran triple shifts in each training room. So 300 training rooms of seating about 50 people each at any point of time running. So that was the training, that was the transformation that could happen. But it caught on. And it caught on. Why? Because of what you see there as a labor arbitrage. Fundamentally, we were able to offer to the world the same quality, or I dare say better quality of work than what they did in their home markets at a fraction of the price. And for years it was a labor arbitrage. I can, give you stories and stories of how we tricked people into understanding what the Indian workforce was capable of. And then the work started flowing in, and yeah, we succeeded in some and we failed in some, because the training was inadequate or whatever. But where we succeeded like nothing on earth. Things that started with, okay, start with 10 people, stop pestering me, take 10 people and let's see what you can do, came to a meeting merely 6 months later to say, Raman, I need to put 2,000 people. How fast can you put 2,000 people? I mean, where the guys cribbed about 10 people, wanted 2,000 and wanted it done in 30 days. So it was the ability to showcase the capability, it was the ability to train, it was the ability to leverage technology. It was also, Ravi spoke about starting there and the government policy coming in. Government policy played a very, very big role in this. Those of you from India would know that this industry initially, or even now at times, is called IT-enabled services. Why? I named it. Why? Because under our Income Tax Act, the things that Ravi spoke about, the incentives that the government gave those incentives only to companies that were in IT and not to other companies. So we started calling ourselves IT-enabled services so that we could get those government incentives. And they played a big role in attracting investment into the sector, in getting companies to set up their own captives. And hey, we created an industry. The industry that today directly and indirectly employs over 10 million people. I have 2 daughters. When they were younger, we used to go for a movie. Not that we don't go when they're older, but I'm giving you the time when they were younger. Out of the blue, at a cinema hall, somebody come and tap me on the back. Shake hands, say thank you and leave. The kids turned around and said, what just happened? I said, I don't know. He came and said thank you. I said, for what? So your dad created a job he is working on. There is nothing more satisfying than seeing that you could impact 10 million families. God is kind, God has been helpful, but we've been able to create an industry.
Thank you. Can I have a round for that, please?
Now, Quattro launched on the principle of BPO in the cloud, targeting mid-level SMEs. Now, can you talk us through, because that is, how do you pivot from scale-driven to platform-enabled?
Okay, so again, I'm told I have the luxury of giving slightly longer answers so that my mindset of what went through my mind, I'm able to communicate.
Should I compliment you with more? No, seriously.
So, what? No, let me answer that. Let me answer that.
I can add to it.
So, if you go by the definition of innovation, and these are principles that are taught in MBA schools, innovation is either coming up with a new way or taking the existing way to newer markets that are yet untapped. So what I've done, Quattro comes from the Latin word fourth. We spoke about Quattro. This is my fourth startup. American Express, what we did was the first. GE, what is Genpact now, was the second. Spectramind, what is Wipro BPO now, was the third. And Quattro is the fourth. And that is how the name came, as the fourth. Till now, in the first three ventures, American Express was a captive. We demonstrated in that India could be a location for international work. In GE, we demonstrated that this was not a one-off instance, it was scalable. GE grew dramatically. But both Amex and GE were captives of large corporations. In Spectramind, we demonstrated that you could do this on a third-party basis. But again, what we did in Spectramind was for larger companies like Amex and GE, what their back office. And you know, when I moved on after Wipro acquired Spectramind, was to say, yes, I could do more of the same, but hey, what shit? Why do more of the same? Entrepreneurs get bored. I like to count myself into the category of entrepreneurs. And doing the same thing again and again, we kind of get bored. There's no challenge. You know, people ask me, so what do you mean by an entrepreneur? You know, you get that little knot in your stomach, not knowing whether the thing that you're doing is working. There's a knot. It's a tension in the stomach. If I don't get it, it's no fun. So I had to find a way to say, where do I want to take it? And I saw the mid-market. Because again, in all my last, 40, 45 years, every bit of business I have done is non-Indian rupee business. It was always international. And when I went international, and you know, like even when you travel, you observe a lot of things. And again, Ravi spoke about the smaller enterprises and all of that. We saw a lot of smaller enterprises. And we saw they were spending, again, it is labor arbitrage. The mindset at that time was labor arbitrage, and I'll build back to where it has come to competency now. But when we saw those small enterprises, say, doing accounting, doing tech support, we said we could do it at 20% or 30% of the cost. But there was no way we could go after that, so we launched Quattro with the intention of going after the mid-market. And I mean, I can give you stories that will make you burst into tears of how tough it was, because the mid-market is not an easy market to target. See, I'll just give you one example, just to give you a flavor of the kind of challenges. What we did for Amex, what we did for GE, what we did for Spectramind or Wipro BPO, we used to meet the customer or a potential customer. We used to tell him or her about what we could do and how we could do it. And then very quickly we would invite him or her to visit us in India so that they could see it live. So we thought that was a great model. And we went after the smaller enterprises. And we told them, you know, I'll do your accounting at 20% of the cost or 40% of the cost or what you come and see it. Till one day a customer over coffee, actually it was something stronger than coffee, told me that, Raman, if I come to India, my 1 year savings will already get eroded by the cost of that flight. And that is what, when the coin dropped, to say, oops, these guys will not come to India. And our entire selling proposition was, come and see it. So we had to reinvent ourselves to be able to showcase our capabilities without physically the customer visiting us and still be able to do that. But that market turned out to be, again, till then, when you take the larger corporations, they buy the, the accounting software, the CRMs, the Salesforce.com or whatever it is. And my team in India used to work on the back end to populate that and utilize that. The SMEs didn't have technologies. So we came up with the option to say, we will buy technology and we will buy it so that it is multi-tenanted. Multiple people can use one installation of that technology and offer it at a fraction of a price for what they are paying today for whatever technology that they are using. And that became a fascinating proposition. I could go on boring you with the gory details of that, but that worked very well for us. It worked very well for our customers. And hey, that is how the fourth generation of my startup went forward.
All right. Thank you very much again. Can I have a round for it? Guys, this is gold dust. Okay? Nobody gets to hear these inside methods. And that's why I want to ask the next question, which is, now, how do I put this? In fact, let me put them both together. You sold Spectramind at $175 million.
I wouldn't talk about the price, but yes, we sold it.
It's public record, by the way. That's how come I got it. Now, you sold it to Wipro. Wipro is a behemoth of an IT giant. How did that work out? Because, let me give you context, because subsequently, Quattro then went on an acquisition buying. So you bought Flextronics BPO, you bought McLaren.
Your research is amazing.
FNAR, mortgage platforms, and Scoping e-knowledge. Now, what's your rulebook for that?
Okay. So, there are two parts to your question. One is the question of sale to Wipro. See, we very quickly decided in our model, this was labor arbitrage, which meant that the labor my customer was employing were now my employees in India, right? Which meant I needed buildings, which meant I needed seats, which meant I needed computers, which meant I needed a lot of investment. So while we demonstrated the model and, in the world of today, there were a lot of private equity firms who were willing to invest and give us the money to be able to grow, we very quickly realized that the growth would come from taking in that capital. And whichever way you do it, even if one guy shows up to say, hey, I'm willing to cut you a check of another $20 million, what can you do with it? Invariably, the discussion would go down to valuation, and then you felt that he was not giving you good value, or she was not giving you good value. And they went through a process of hiring an investment banker and determining valuation. That was a 3 to 6 month process that took away the time of my senior management. And in that time, we could not focus on the market and continue to grow the way we were growing. That is one part of our realization that we needed money, and we needed money big time. The second part came in when, at an early stage, Wipro, which is a very recognized brand name in India, came in to say, very interesting what you're doing, Rama. We'd like to put in a notional amount of money so that we get an understanding of what this exciting space is that you're playing in. Good, bad or ugly, we let them come in at that time. And then Wipro took our proposition, learning from us, to their IT customer base that, by the way, if we did back office for you, would you be interested? By the way, if we did customer service for you, would you be interested? By the way, if we did tech support for you, would you be interested? And the answer of the customers was an overwhelming yes. So Wipro said, rather than build, it is best to buy. We have a small investment. And both the factors that we needed money, and Wipro had not just deep, but very, very, very deep pockets. And their customer base wanted it, that initiated a dialogue. I was not interested in selling. I thought we could get a huge, huge value. And what I'm about to say to the budding entrepreneurs will tell you how to structure your agreements with your investors. While Wipro approached us, and for Wipro, DNA matching, that we can work together, cultural fit, was very important. They went through that process. It was a process that lasted a few months. But ultimately they said, this asshole, Raman is not going to agree. So they went to our investors. And they called our investors without me. I still remember one Saturday morning, the call came from a lead investor to say, can we grab a cup of coffee together? I said, Saturday? I hardly get time off, man. Don't bug me like, no, Raman, I still go to Hyatt Regency, and if that particular table is vacant, I invariably take that table where I met my investor. And in that he said, Wipro is willing to pay an incredible value. I'm not confirming the number. I told him, you're kidding me, they're willing to pay that. He says, no, they are. I said, wow, good for you. He says, no, not for me. Clause 70, page 7 says, we can drag you along. We are dragging you along because Wipro wants 100% acquisition. The way the deal ultimately concluded was, yes, Wipro bought a part of us out, some part, we said as we grow we get more money, but the investors they bought out fully. But that is how we became a part of Wipro. So that is the first part of your question. What was the second part?
Well, the second part was around the acquisitions.
Sorry, it was around the acquisitions.
So when I spoke about the go-to-market of Quattro as the small and medium, we also felt that we did not need to build Dino, because as I gave you the example that we realized that in the smaller market, we had to come with our own technology and a multi-tenanted environment. So we decided we'll acquire companies that are not doing well. I'll give you an example just to, again, share the mindset of where we were. One of the companies that we acquired was the back office of the multilateral thing. He spoke about it. They were doing accounting for restaurants and hotels. And I still remember going with my M&A guy for that meeting, which started at whatever, 10, 11 in the morning in the US. At a coffee break, we went to the loo. Those of you who've been to the US, they have cabins. You can see at the bottom if somebody's inside the loo. We checked, nobody was inside the loo, just two of us were there. And my M&A head's name was Balki. I said, Balki, get me this company. He said, we just spent 2 hours. Are you loony? Let's understand a little more. I said, no, you don't understand. With the number of clients they have, they are running over 100 installations of the same software. If I take it to one installation, which is our model, from EBITDA negative, where we were getting a very good price because that company was at EBITDA negative, we'll take it to EBITDA positive without any effort on incremental customers or doing anything. So the coin dropped. Post lunch, the company was shocked. Our gears changed. Pre-lunch it was tell us how you do this, tell us how you do that. And post lunch we were only doing things to negotiate the price downwards. That company which we cleaned up and then we added, we sold at 40 times the value that we acquired it at. So our model became acquire, clean up and sell. So a lot of people come to say, don't you feel bad when you sell a company? I mean, your blood, sweat and toil have gone into it. No, to say I don't feel bad would be a lie. But our model is to buy and sell. If you are running a poultry farm and your model is to slaughter the chickens, why burst into tears when the chickens are slaughtered? So that is how the acquisitions came in. We continue to operate on that model. For our businesses, every business we buy, we put into a subsidiary. Now GST in India creates some challenges. We found a way to overcome some of them, some we've not. So out of all the subsidiaries we had, 5 of them we've sold. We had investors, they made good money. We also made money. Not as good as you think. But we used that money to buy out our investors in the 6th company. Now the 6th company, I and my management team own. So we still have the model. We're still looking at companies that we can acquire. Not very actively, because I don't spend 100% of my time there. Which is, okay, let me talk about that particular thing again. I'm a co-founder, like PG sitting here, we are both co-founders of the Indian Angel Network. We do a lot of investing with the Angel. Okay, we'll come to that. But I meet a lot of potential entrepreneurs who come back and say that, 10 to 5, I can work a little longer. And I tell them that is not what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs are on a 24/7 job. You eat, live, breathe, drink. Whatever it is that you're doing. I've woken up at 3 in the morning with an idea that has been troubling me. And at 3 in the morning, I've called my CFO to say, you remember that problem? Why don't we do it like this? Both the wives meet and say, these guys are mad. Because the CFO's wife knows my wife and my wife knows the wife. And they said, 3 in the morning, he's sitting in the bedroom and talking to your husband, what the hell is happening? And she also tells her husband and all. But hey, that is life, that is entrepreneurship.
Okay, let me labor on that for a minute. About 10 years ago, I don't know if you remember, you're going to sell part of Quattro for about $500 million, right? Yeah. What went through your mind and what changed?
Look, as I said, we created a model. Our model was to create multiple businesses. The corporate office was not for sale. Okay, so what was for sale were those subsidiaries, and again, you could buy today, clean it up in a week and sell it the next week. This is not real estate. You do that in real estate. At least in India you do. People go buy, next week they sell and they come back laughing all the way to the bank. Here you have to build a business, you have to create processes, you have to create technology, you have to create a go-to-market, you have to do a whole lot of things. So our businesses were available at a right price, but Quattro per se was not available. Okay, maybe in that particular discussion, to be honest, where I said, yeah, it is available, but Indians will understand this, then I'll explain it to non-Indians. But I said, I do not come as a part of the Dahej. Dahej is the dowry we give when the daughter is married, what goes with the daughter. And I said, you can acquire the company, but I don't come with it because I will do something else. I don't want a boss. And they said, without you, we are not going to buy. Good luck. So,
I knew there had to be something about that. Because when I read it, I was like, there's something, you know how you read a story and you can tell there's something missing in it.
You've been wasting your time reading wrong stories. You should read about Trump.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and guess what? I don't like wearing it. Now, I want to sort of flip back. Earlier, we were talking about training. Because to me, that's what it is. The fact that you could train literally thousands of people and have impact on millions of lives. Today, when I look at my continent and the fact that we're getting younger and younger, and our education systems are still colonially antiquated, that seems to me the single biggest challenge which, if we crack, we're well on our way. Can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely, without any iota of doubt. If any country, and Kenya just being an example, or East Africa just being an example, and India being an example, we get our act together on creating a workforce that is trained, educated, and trained. So, when it comes to global competency centers, that is what is attracting in terms of the rate of growth of back office. If you track the last 2-3 years, and NASSCOM tracks that data. I'm a member of the executive committee of NASSCOM. I'm a past chairman. So full disclosure that I'm an interested party there when I talk nice things about NASSCOM. That data shows that the competency centers is the largest growth that is happening, that is keeping the nose above water of the entire IT industry in terms of rate of growth. Why? Because of the capability of an Indian workforce. Now, let me take an example. I won't name any company, but I'll give you the concept. If you need 100 AI engineers who have a particular competency and capability, the only country in the world where you can get them in that scale is India. Kenya could compete with it downstream, but today it is the competency of the people that is driving that growth. The per head rate, the top line is still growing, but the number of people are declining. Which means that the per head rate of revenue is growing significantly higher because of that competency. Now that is the good news. Let me give you the bad news from my lens out of India. Other than a handful of colleges, IITs, IISCs, triple ITs, a few of them, other than a handful of colleges, the output for our mass colleges is not competent or capable enough to be able to do these jobs in the competency centers. They are at best, what I started by saying, like molten wax, trainable but not trained. Now the industry has made investments in that training to get the right raw material and create it into competency. I'll give you an example. We used to do tech support in courtroom. Okay? It was one of my most profitable businesses. Why most profitable? It was a retail tech support product, which meant if you called the tech support number that my printer is not working, my laptop is not working, my desktop is not working, whatever. If you go to shops, the departmental stores in the US, they charge you $300-400 to do that one-time fix. We created a product that for $250 to $300 per annum, you could call us unlimited. And that money had to be paid up front. Cash flow wise, we were sitting on big money because people paid that money, and it was great business. We are habitual analyzers of data. 6.3 times a year is what a guy called. So if we paid $250, 6.3 times, it was a very profitable business. For that business, we used to train our staff. Because again, those of you who are in the call center world will relate to this. First call resolution, that you close the issue in the first call, is very important because every call costs you money. We used to train people to be able to do that, give them technology, give them capability, and then suddenly we started facing a huge attrition. So while we redoubled our effort in hiring and training and everything, we again did a little bit of investigation, and we discovered when the kids finished their training, we used to do a graduation ceremony equivalent, and we used to give them a certificate from Quattro saying that they are certified to do tech support. What we did not know is that certificate had value in the market. The kid went to the potential employer and said, I'm certified by Quattro. They said, we'll double your money, come. So while the fix was pretty simple, we stopped issuing those certificates, the attrition dropped. But it never dropped that fully. So challenges come out of the blue. Challenges are there. But, I guess the entrepreneurial capability is to find solutions and to be able to do something around it.
That was a perfect segue into this question.
I set myself up.
Now, Quattro has clients across finance, accounting, risk, and knowledge services, mostly in North America, right? Now, we've got this rising nearshoring and automation. Microsoft just laid off, 8,000 people due to AI. How are you future-proofing your service revenues?
Look, the replacement by AI, and I think all the previous speakers spoke about it. It's a reality. You can't wish it away. At the moment, what is happening, the way I look at the crystal ball is what I call rule set processing. If this happens, do this. That is what we started the entire BPO industry with. We took the lowest end. If else, what it here, that is what we trained the staff on. And over a period of time, we grew into problem solving and decision making. Like tech support examples that I've been giving, like airline, I need to go to Kenya, then I want to go to Nairobi, then I want to go from Nairobi to Nigeria, to the AI's ability as of today to handle it is a little challenging. The rule set based work, at least where India is concerned, fortunately or unfortunately, a large portion of it went to Philippines because of voice and accent. Philippines' voice and accent was far superior and far more neutral than those of Indians. So the present impact is more, it is on the industry, yes, but it is more on Philippines. When AI evolves, and I see that in 3 odd years, 3 to 5 is what I typically say, we need to be prepared to have a skill set of creating the AI intelligence, that also requires human intervention. We need to create the skill set to take it to the next level. And again, I come back to what I said earlier. It comes back to education. It comes back to training. The ability of the industry to pay a salary and train people for that level of competency. At least if I was still running my company, I would not do it. And I don't think the successors today will do that. And therefore, we have to find another way to do it. Policy has a role to play. Government has a role to play. Talking to each other has a role to play. And if what you wish to accomplish from this meeting, if there's one message I'd like to give out is to the policymakers, the government, the industry, the customers, to sit together and talk openly, not with the press in attendance, where you can speak your heart to what it is and find solutions to what can make the future happen.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Can I have a round of applause for it, please? We're nearly done. You're not going to get away without this one. Now, not only are you a serial entrepreneur, Quattro's number 4, you're also a founding member of one of the most prolific angel networks on the planet, the Indian Angel Network. And you've got, what, 50 plus startups in your portfolio?
150.
100, there you go. Can I have a round of applause, please? Now, what are the fundamental traits you look for in founders, okay, when they're going from beginning to competency center?
Out of all the questions you asked me, this is the most difficult. It's very difficult to describe, at least for me to describe what I look for in a founder. You know, you meet a founder and you talk to a founder and you talk a little more about his or her background or what they are doing, how they look at market, how they look at customers. And you get that feeling to say, this guy is okay. And you meet another founder, and I've had such cases where I come back and say, no, I don't think I'm keen in investing there. And people are after me to say, what a great proposition, what a great thing he's doing. Maybe I don't trust the guy. So it's a gut feel. It is about how he says, how he talks. So again, I'll give you, not as a generic, but just as an example where I got a lot of grief when I rejected something. For whatever reason, we called this founder to come and visit me at my office in Quattro. And when he called that he was coming, I went down to meet him. My office was on the second floor. I went down to meet him at the gate. He drove in with his driver, so do I. Do nothing against that. Okay? My security guys hanging around there saw Big Boss was there. This guy must be important. They tried to hang around. The way he told his driver where to go, the way he told my security guards to get out of the way he said, I felt there was no respect and dignity. He didn't even have to come into my conference room to present. In that moment, I decided I'm not going with this guy. Founders cannot afford to have a chip on their shoulder. Having been a founder a few times around, you're your tea boy, you're the cleaner, you have to clean the table, you have to talk to the customer, you have to write the presentation, you have to change the order of the presentation, you have to you do everything. And if you treat people with disrespect, you will never get the right people to be your management team. And if you don't have a management team, you are dead.
Thank you. Can I have a round of applause again? Finally, my last question.
Oh, okay.
With the India,
I thought that was the last. I mean, you said
I've got to set this in context because with the India-Africa Summit backdrop, how can India BPO models be adapted to power African competency centers? And what's critical for that successful transfer?
So the most pertinent word that you used is adapted. Don't try to copy and paste. It cannot work. The adaptation has to be done based on local needs, employee needs, customer needs, and everything. Is adaptation possible? Yes. No, I'm a student of Six Sigma. There is a concept called design of experiments. You design an experiment with multiple things, some will fail, some will work. But it is essential not to just copy-paste because it will not work.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we've come to the end of this conversation. Can I have a big round of applause? Big round of applause, everybody. And they will both be here for the duration of the program, so do make sure